To datamanagementu.com's webinar series, monthly webinars on all topics in data management, including data governance. I am your host for the session. My name's Anne Marie Smith, and I am the executive editor of datamanagementu.com. And we'd like to welcome you today to a webinar that we think will be really informative. We have some housekeeping items. Please answer the poll. I see people are doing that. If you have a question, please put it in Q&A. Do not put it in chat because that doesn't give us the opportunity to answer the question. Chats are for comments and saying hello, etc., but we monitor questions and answers more thoroughly. If you are interested in education in areas of data management, like data governance, like enterprise data management, metadata management, data literacy, etc., and datamanagementeducation.com is your source for that. We hope you follow Data Management U on social media, especially LinkedIn. The Data Management U page is very active. We know that our webinar attendees love rewatching our sessions. Every Data Management U event is live streamed to YouTube, and it's there recorded as well. So if you missed something and you want to go back and watch it again, just go to the EWSolutions YouTube channel. The slides for the presentation are available on the webinar webpage. And if you stay for the entire event, you will receive a certificate for one professional development unit. Remember, it's the entire event. Thank you to our sponsors who make this possible. EWSolutions, Octopi, OneTrust, and Metric Insights. I also want to thank our partner organizations, IMM Africa, IDMA, and IAIBC. If you are a member of an organization and would like to become a partner with DMU, or if you represent an organization that would like to sponsor DMU, please don't hesitate to contact us. And again, we thank both partners and sponsors for their participation. Today's event is about assessments, primarily data governance assessments, but we will also be talking about how essential data management assessing is to an organization. As you know, if you've been here before, we have an interactive discussion. So if you have a question, please pop it into Q&A and we will address it to the extent we have time to.
Bring it on. Bring us your best questions.
Absolutely. In a minute, David will be looking at the results of the polling. And I would like to introduce now our speaker, David Marca. He's the president of EWSolutions and is known as the world's foremost authority on metadata management and on data governance. He also has an expert background in business intelligence and just about every other area of enterprise data management. It's why EWSolutions is a premier consulting company in this field. David, are you ready to start?
Absolutely, I am, Anne-Marie. Let's take a look at the polling results. And I think it's pretty interesting. In first place, followed closely in second place is, hey, we've started to evaluate our data governance program and are using internal resources. And that 28% of the people voted for that. And then number two is we have discussed the need for an evaluation of our approach, but any effort, will probably be done by the internal staff. I think coming into this poll, I would imagine these would be top vote getters. What do you think, Anne-Marie?
I was surprised. I was surprised that we have so many responses that are actually doing a data governance assessment with internal resources. I thought we would have more of the, well, we haven't really thought about it yet, too.
Well, and it's important because a lot of organizations are still somewhat junior in their data governance maturity. And so one of the first steps, it's one of the first steps we do is an assessment. In fact, when we work with an organization, that's almost always the first step, is assessing what they've done. And and I will walk through this whole concept today of where are we at today and where do we need to get to? and then you create a plan to get you there. Anne Maria, any other thoughts? One number that surprised me, 15% of people said, hey, I'm not sure we've even heard this term before.
I was surprised at that too, David.
Especially with our audience. I mean, I can look at some of our participants, and we have some, very experienced people in our audience today. So, and that's typical of our audience. I'm a little surprised at that number. That tells me that, our group tends to be, quite leading edge. I would imagine that number would be probably double of just general corporate IT people. All right. I think that's it for the poll. I'm going to put that down, and let's talk about conducting a data governance assessment. It's absolutely essential for success. I saw that we already have a question on data management assessments. Much of what I cover today will be applicable for larger data management as well. If you need some more information on conducting a data management assessment, shoot me an email. Either we'll do a webinar on the topic, or I'll send you, I have some slides on doing a data management assessment. But let me get into the topic because I have so much to discuss. So this is just a background slide on EWSolutions. We have been blessed enough to have won just about every award you can in data governance and data management. We have done over 100 data governance assessments since 1997. I think we could do an assessment blindfolded because we've just done so many of them. In fact, I know we have some folks in the audience. We're going to be starting yet another assessment next week with a new client partner. This is just my background. You can read it at your leisure. What I would recommend, I do include my email address. If you have questions, you're working on a data governance assessment, feel free to shoot me an email. Follow me or connect with me on LinkedIn. I post teaching videos and articles and comments there. So please don't hesitate to reach out. So enough of all the background stuff. Let's get into a data governance assessment. Start with the basics. So it's an industry best practice. Anytime you're looking to kick off a data governance effort, or if you're looking to revitalize an effort that's floundering, you need to do an assessment. There are very few people who would argue with that. What is a data governance assessment? Much like any assessment, we need to look at, are we ready as an organization, whether it's technically, politically, with our people's skill sets, to progress in data governance, to mature. And it's really a combination of two things. You assess our current state as is, and then you create a target to be. This is where we're going. And this is all done based on the business requirements that come out of the assessment. I am going to give you a criteria for all of this. If you're thinking, oh goodness, I wouldn't know how to assess that. Don't worry. We have done so many of these. We've built criteria for all this. So I'm going to look forward to sharing it with you.
David, before you continue, we have a question that's been posed a couple times. Is this appropriate for small and medium-sized enterprises, or should only big companies be looking at this?
Oh goodness, no, it should be for any company. There's an old saying, if you don't know where you're going, every road will take you there. So, and an assessment defines where you're going. If you think it's just going to happen, here's what I will promise you, it will not. You will not just automatically mature. You need to have a careful plan and a strategy that'll get you there. And that's what a data governance assessment accomplishes. So if you are a small or medium-sized business, 100% you need an assessment. It's so important, because if not, you'll just try to do it ham-handedly. I'll give you an example. Analytics, I'll liken it to analytics. Anytime we work with a small to medium-sized business and we look at their analytical capabilities, they almost all universally build it the same way. It's just a bunch of one-off data marts. None of them, right, Amber?
Absolutely.
A bunch of one, and then what do we have to do? None of these things have a single version of the truth. None of them even calculate basic business terms the same way, like product sales. That'll differ between every data mart that has product sales in it, because everybody pulls the data a little bit differently. They integrate it a little bit differently. There's no enterprise definition. So what happens is you have to rebuild that whole spaghetti mess from the ground up, and it's expensive to do it that way. I've seen the same thing in data governance. I'm thinking of one company in particular. They had several what we would call point data governance solutions, one or two people heroically doing some capability of data governance, probably just for a department or even a smaller group of people, but none of it's for the enterprise, none of it's scalable, and none of it can go beyond their department or group. Anne-Marie, do you feel that answered the question?
I think so.
Awesome. Anne-Marie's going to check on me on this. This is the joy of Anne-Marie's life. On these webinars, to ask me the tough questions, but I'm ready for it. Anyway, when you do an assessment, I shared with you, we're going to be kicking off an assessment next week with a new client partner. And so for those of you who are on this, who are taking this webinar, you're going to hear this again. To me, a good assessment needs to be fair. It needs to avoid bias. It needs to be accurate, and it needs to be tailored. So to me, as a consultant, when I'm doing an assessment, it's not about my predispositions. It's not about who I like or a particular department or who hired you. It needs to be fair, and it needs to avoid bias. So when you look at something, you have to look at it in the correct lens. It should be accurate. If we say a company has 2 SAP systems or 3 SAP systems, then they need to have 3 SAP systems. It needs to be tailored, meaning focused and customized for that particular business or federal agency, because the same things don't work in every organization. So these are some of the key things. And the second, really the other thing, and it's not on this slide, but I do want to bring up, when you do an assessment, and many of you have done these in our audience today, it is not your job to point blame. And I will tell client partners this right up front. I don't care who is to blame if some situation's bad. It is not my job to assign blame, nor am I interested in it. What we are interested in is, what do we need to do to progress our organization and mature it? That's all that's relevant. This is important because I have to tell you, many times when you walk in the door to do an assessment, there's somebody who who spent some money working on data governance. It isn't going the way that they had planned and hoped and dreamed it would go, and they don't want you to put them on the chopping block. I never put anybody on the chopping block. That is not the goal when I do an assessment. And if you're going to do an assessment, I would strongly urge you to follow my advice on this. All you'll do is create a political quagmire that nobody needs. All that's relevant is, regardless if we're in a bad place, what do we need to do to mature? Because really, when you look at I'm sorry, Anne-Marie, did you want to jump in? I was going to say,
even if you're in a good place, you're always got opportunities to mature. So whatever place you're in, you want to make sure you know how to improve.
Absolutely.
And how to maintain what you're doing right.
Absolutely, because that's a key thing. Sometimes companies, in their initial forays into data governance, the ones who do it correctly, they don't really think about, well, I have to maintain this over time. What are going to be our ongoing procedures for it? Especially if you're in a matrixed organization where your data stewards are just kind of in that box and they're reporting to 2 or 3 different people. You better be ready to lose stewards, especially lead stewards, and be able to replace them. But anyway, back to the assessment. It should, again, give an accurate and non-biased look at where are we at today. It should then give so that's as is. Then it should give a future recommendation, a to be. Where are we going? For a small and medium-sized business, so we have built, a lot of we have built some of the most complex and world-class data governance programs in the industry. That's not for every organization. A smaller company needs to have it right-sized for their business requirements. So that's why that 2B state, it's so important to tailor that. And then to have a recommendation roadmap. What are the recommended things that we need to do to progress to get to that 2B state? So let me continue. So when we do a current state analysis, let me go through some of the key items here. Is when we do a current state analysis, we are looking at things like maturity levels, which I've not gone over yet, but it's coming up on a future slide, and environmental elements. So when you evaluate a data governance program, you're not just giving it a score, an overall score, and that's the only thing you're looking at. You're looking at each of the major environmental elements. Here are the 6 we use at EWSolutions. We've been using these for 20 years. Activities and deliverables. Do the deliverables of the data governance program adhere to industry best practices? Roles in organization. Do we have the right place for data governance in the organization? If data governance is part of the DBA team in IT, you're not going to score well in this one. That's not where it should be residing. The head of data governance shouldn't report to the head of the DBAs. That would not be a good approach. That's going to score low. Practices and metrics. Have we built good baseline measurements for our data governance program? I'm thinking of an insurance company we worked with for years. I remember doing an assessment of their data governance program and trying to help them mature. They had a fantastic group. I think they had 14 or 15 data stewards, bright, engaged, huge portions of their time. I think they were all at least 50% allocated to data governance. So big effort. They had accomplished many great things for this company. However, they never took a baseline measurement. So if you looked at their roles in organizations, they scored really well. They had excellent skills and good training. They had a great culture, but they didn't have any metrics, no KPIs, key performance indicators for their data governance program. So in that area, that environmental element, they scored low. Technology. What kind of tech are we bringing to the table? We have a situation. I was on a call early this morning where we're working with a huge agency. And in that one, they're completely an AWS environment. And it looks like we're going to be constrained by the agency to just that environment. That's going to make data governance a lot more complex. That's not going to be the leading edge technology that we see from so many of these great companies in our industry, the Octopis, the Calibras, the Elations, the Talents, and so on and so forth. I apologize if I didn't name your favorite data governance tool. There's many wonderful tools out there.
But David,
yes.
Wouldn't you say that you don't really need technology in the beginning to do data governance effectively?
So I'm going to give you the consulting answer of that depends. I think I think to do the assessment, we don't need technology at that point. I've always said technology should be a line item on a project plan. So and you know this, as we go through an assessment for an organization, we look, if you're a global 2000 company or one of these massive federal agencies that we've worked with, like FAA, EPA, Department of Defense, now you're most likely looking at a technology purchase in your near future. But to your point, Anne-Marie, some of the things you do in the early parts of a data governance program, building a domain model. If you don't know what that is, we did a whole webinar on this topic. Building out your organizational framework, getting your data stewards together, building out your business cases. For those things, you don't need technology other than what you probably have in-house. But really to do, if you're a large company, you're probably going to be looking at a data governance purchase in the near term. Great question. And culture, skills and training. This is so important because the people on your data governance team, they need to have the right skills. I'm thinking of one organization I spoke to recently who, most of their team members don't have a background in data governance. Their skills are newer in the field. You really want to have some structured training with that. Anne Marie, I'll ask you to put in the chat our data governance mastery course. That's why we built that. I personally built that course to help somebody grow as a data governance professional, because I've seen too many companies. They set up their people to fail. They will say, hey, you're going to implement data governance, and the folks don't know a thing about it. They've gone to Google, they downloaded a couple of articles. I'll give you a little hint: articles by people who've never implemented data governance in their life, and they think they're going to be successful. That won't be. Let me keep moving. Last but not least, culture. Anne Marie, I've spent so much time talking about the other environmental elements, and I haven't even hit the most important one: culture.
Absolutely, David.
Oh goodness. Let me try to summarize this, or I will blow all my time on this slide. Whether you are a data governance professional or a data management professional, you are a culture change agent. That's what you are. No company needs to hire me to help them to continue to screw up their data as they've done for the last 30, 40, 50, 100 years. You don't need any consultant to help you do that. You're good enough at that on your own. It is our job as professionals to change the status quo. And anytime you're changing the status quo, you're dealing with personalities, you're dealing with emotions. It's interesting, in our we did a webinar on organizational change management, and I shared the William Bridges model for organizational change management, and it shows several different stages that companies go through when they're trying to change their culture. And I superimpose that model onto the Kubler-Ross model of the 5 stages of grief. What is the Kubler-Ross model? It is when you have the most horrible life events that life can throw at you. Death of a spouse, death of a child, your own imminent death, divorce, all these just horribly difficult things. And if you look at that Kubler-Ross model, it is almost exact word for word with the William Bridges model for organizational change management. So culture is one of the most important things. Let me move forward and get off this slide. Let's talk about data governance maturity levels. We use 5 levels. I will tell you right off the get-go, I'm going to spend almost no time on levels 4 and 5. I will go through in more detail the first 3. These are roughly based on the capability maturity model that Carnegie Mellon University uses. Probably many in our audience are familiar with this. Level 1, which is informal processes, level 2, which is emerging, and level 3, which is engineered. I'm going to spend almost no time on levels 4 and 5. I will just tell you this. Let me summarize these levels if you are new to CMMI. Level 1, think of as heroic efforts. Anne Marie and I are sitting in the same department. We get along somewhat, and we say, hey, between the two of us, we're going to do this data governance policy. We're going to make sure to adhere to ISO 3166 for country codes. That's great. It can work really well between her and I, who work together. Before COVID, we were seated in the same area. That can work great. However, that's only within our department, maybe within our group. That's level 1. It's heroic effort. Level 2 is emerging processes. This is where a department or a line of business is adhering to a best practice in data governance. Let's think of it as that same ISO country code standard I gave. Let's say we're doing that within our whole line of business. Maybe we're marketing. Awesome. Level 3, this is enterprise-wide. This is when the whole organization is adhering to those policies. I will tell you right now, the hardest thing to do for me as a I don't want to say how many year data governance professional, is helping companies mature from level 2 to level 3. It is the hardest jump. And of course, it's the one that brings the biggest value. It is the one that makes a company data driven. So enough of the overview. Let's get into the details. Okay. Level 1, and again, I will not go through all of this for you. Here are the things when we are doing an assessment, we're going to look at to say if somebody's level 1. So first of all, executive management. Are they aware of data governance and do they support it? And maybe 1 or 2 people do, but there's no enterprise buy-in. And in fact, most of them don't even think data governance is valuable. Maybe we don't even have a formal program for data management. That's the next one. Maybe data responsibilities are just assigned across separate, disparate IT groups. Maybe we have little or no business involvement in data governance. These are all the things we see when a company or an organization is at level one. So for example, you always know somebody's level one where you go to their data governance team and it's one person. Talk to Mary. She's data governance. And Mary will get up and she'll be so sweet and she'll say, I am the data governance maven. Well, that's awesome. But Mary, you're at a global 2000 company. You cannot do data governance for all of it. You need a team. Data stewards, we won't have any formal data stewards. We'll just hope to get people's time. We'll beg for it. There'll be general purpose tools, but no real data governance tool. My personal favorite is when you go into a company and you say, oh, do you have any data governance tools? And they say, yes, we do. We have SharePoint. SharePoint is not a data governance tool. I will let that sink in. I'm sorry I had to tell you that. Please breathe slowly, level your heart rate. It's not. It's a limited purpose tool. So we really want to have proper technology, proper teams. So this gives you a good idea of what you see at level one. Let me continue because I could spend all day on these slides. Level two, what do we see? When we see an organization that we would deem at level two, here we're going to see some executives who understand the importance of data governance and even be willing to invest in it. But we don't really have enterprise buy-in. I think of one company, a manufacturing firm, really nice people. I remember speaking to their head of design and development, and she was all gung-ho about data management. For a creative person, you don't always see that. Very motivated. But then I talked to the chief merchandising officer, and this guy was completely thought data was pretty useless. He instead made his decisions based on what Kim Kardashian would tweet. That's not my opinion. That's not my joke. That's what the guy told me to my face. Oh, I'm following what celebrities are saying. Awesome. I totally understood why their revenues were in a nice steady decline for the last 6 years. It made all the sense in the world.
David, one other thing I'd mention is that a lot of emerging organizations have decided that all of enterprise data management is suddenly called data governance. And they might have somebody who knows about data governance in a position, but they don't understand the relationship between data governance and metadata management, or how those two things affect data quality, or how you really need these things to work together with data integration. And that person who has suddenly been identified as the data governance leader is expected to be the know-it-all for all of those areas.
Anne-Marie, you know this. Data management is comprised of 14 knowledge areas. One of them is data governance. There's 13 others.
Right.
And it's very unfair to think, hey, we're going to hire a data governance professional, and that means they know a lot about document and content management. That means they know everything there is about data modeling. You know, Anne-Marie, you know this. I've spent my career in data management doing the hardest, most complex projects, working with the best client partners. Those 14 areas, I'm not an expert at all of them. If you ask me about document and content management, I know quite a fair amount about it. I would never claim to be an expert in that particular area because it's not been my focus. And really, a lot of people don't understand, just to your point, of how these things are interrelated. If you want to build data management throughout your company, there are two key things you need to invest in always. Number one, data governance. You probably guessed that. And number two, and Anne-Marie brought it up, metadata management. It's foundational. Metadata management gives you the who, what, when, where, how, and why of your data. Whether you're doing master data management, data modeling, data science, advanced analytics, any of the 6 advanced forms of analytics. If you don't know the who, what, when, where, how, and why of your data, you can have data scientists who know the p-value formula off the top of their head. None of their models are going to work. your cute little AI stuff, throw that in the garbage, because your data's bad. That model's going to be bad. It's going to break the model because you can't trust the data.
And assessing data governance means you're also assessing those other areas of enterprise data management.
Yep.
Because they all affect data governance, or data governance affects them. It's bi-directional.
Yeah, Anne-Marie, we're not going to name the company, but remember this would be a number of years ago. We were speaking to that insurance company, and they were they had budgeted money. They wanted to move forward on data governance, and they had no idea that metadata management was the key technical enabler of data governance. That was a newsflash. And that shows a company that really hadn't done their homework. You want to make sure to do your homework on this. So let me continue. When we're at level 2, some of the things you see at level 2, we have a data governance team. Maybe it's 1 or 2 people. Maybe some data governance processes are starting to form, but they're really only built for 1, maybe 2 departments, not across the enterprise. Possibly we even have purchased a data governance tool, but the organization doesn't have any developers on the tool. It's not properly implemented. Let me give a little news flash, because I get asked about data governance tools all the time. There's never been a better time to purchase tools for data governance. There's some very exciting tools out there that I've mentioned. I forgot to mention OneTrust. That's another wonderful tool that's out there. None of these tools operate by themselves. You need people who understand, and it is their job function to utilize those tools. That's the key. Metadata management, seminal, I brought that up. And really what we're looking at when an organization is level 2 is we will see some good, sound data governance policies, but they're being done within a department or a line of business. They're not being done across the enterprise. Let me keep going, because I know we have a lot of questions and I'm way behind. Level 3, this is when we're doing it enterprise-wide. Here, our executives have bought in at an enterprise level into data governance. We have fully functional metadata management, a real managed metadata environment. If you don't know what that is, we have articles on Data Management U on that topic. Yours truly wrote them. Why wouldn't I? My topic area. We have an enterprise approach to data cleansing. And keep this in mind, enterprise data dictionary. There is a single, just in case people miss that word, single enterprise data dictionary, not 14 different data dictionaries, half of which have the same data in it. So that's what we see at level 3. So this slide kind of just details when we think somebody's at level 3, they have excellent executive involvement. There's clearly defined ongoing business data stewardship, central data management within the organization, quality SLAs, service level agreements, which are defined and monitored, and proactive skill development along with periodic audits. Let me keep going. Level 4 and level 5 really, again, are, I've had my dessert and I just want to get a little more frosting. Like I've eaten my cake, but I want a little bit of cake batter. So at these levels, we're bringing in concepts of quantitative analysis, which is measurements on our processes. And here, when you hit level 4, you can start predicting future performance for your data management and data governance efforts. And level 5, we have added, along with quantitative, also qualitative measurement and understanding. So here we should certainly have well-defined historical KPIs. Let me keep going because I have so much more to talk about. Okay. Hopefully that walkthrough gave you a good idea of the checklist things we're looking for when we do a data governance assessment. Now, that's only as is. What about 2B? Based on the business requirements that we're hearing from an organization, you map out their 2B. For example, you may have a company who's a manufacturing company and their focus is product and material, very typical for a manufacturing company. Then we want to make sure to build out first our data governance programs, product data stewardship teams, and materials data stewardship teams. And guess what? There's going to be a third domain that'll come in there, and that's going to be supplier or vendor, whichever terminology you would like to use. That won't take long. These are classic things that we see, and you need to create that to be, where are we going, based on here's where we're at. So for example, if you're at a level 1.2 in your data governance maturity, your goal shouldn't be in a year to get to a 3.5, because I have a news flash. It isn't going to happen. It takes more time than that to mature. And it is something that doesn't happen in a single jump. So you want to make sure that you define a to be that not only technically can you get to, but culturally you can. That's a big thing, especially younger organizations. They're accustomed to doing things in a very entrepreneurial or maverick way. Well, guess what? We're going to have to modify that behavior a little bit and have a little bit more control as we move forward. And that kind of organizational change will take a little time. Let me keep going. Here's a key slide. I just want to show you the assessment process includes interviews and expert analysis. Up to this point, I've talked a lot about expert analysis, but what you try to do is look at each piece of information you get as an expert in this and interview some of the key people to identify where are we at and where should we be going. What I'm showing you on this slide, we rolled out just a few months ago an online, on-demand, automated data governance assessment. First one ever. I don't know anybody even attempting this thing. And we had to build it internally. We had to have a development team build this from scratch. And I really like what we came up with. And what it shows you is for those environmental elements, you see them here as categories. We have a series of questions on sponsorship for the initiative. What kind of support do we have in the organization? What kind of resources do we have? And then what other data management disciplines do we have that supports us? And basically, and it goes on and on. And what we do is based on how people answer the question, we assign a grade. This is a letter grade, just like you remember back in college. I remember my college days. You get a letter grade. So maybe in this particular example, we have really great sponsorship. So we have an A. Oh, that's fantastic. However, our data governance resources are not well trained. Maybe we don't even have a team app that only got a D based on the survey respondents. So this is a fun automated assessment that we have. We're actually starting to use this to save our client partners money. Instead of having EWSolutions consultants interview everybody to get this information, we're doing it with the online assessment, and it's costing much less money. So we really like this.
One thing I would point out is the online assessment does give you really robust responses to your questions. You don't get a one-line, sorry, Charlie, as a response. You get detailed reports, and that's all from our intellectual capital based on how many hundred data governance assessments we've done as consultants. And it's based on the best practices from data governance professionals.
Yeah, a good example is we have some questions on a domain model. If you don't have a domain model, you're gonna get a low score. I hate to use the word F, but you're going to get a low score on that one, and you'll get a recommendation if you need to build one. Even if you have a domain model, there are some questions that detail, how many domains do you have? I can tell you if you give the wrong number, you're going to get a recommendation to bring in somebody who can help you with your domain model. So it's those kind, just Anne-Marie, to your point, it has to give recommendations. That's the key. All right, let me keep going. All right. As I mentioned, it's not reasonable to go from level 1 to level 3 in one program iteration. I've been tasked to do that in the past. That is boiling the ocean, and it's very difficult. Maturing your data governance program is a several step project. I know for me, I like to first look at, you need compelling business cases. If you're a commercial entity, look at the corporate objectives as defined by your CEO. If you're a federal agency, we do a pile of work in the federal government sector. what I look at is an agency's mission. First thing I look at, we're right now in talks with an agency, an intelligence agency. They have 4 key mission statements. Whatever it is we do for them, it needs to support one or more of those mission statements. Pain points. What are real things that have happened? And I could just share with you, Anne-Marie, I'll ask you to copy this also. We did a whole webinar on defining return on investment. Anne-Marie, could you please put that in the chat? I walked through this in much more detail than I have time to do here. Because based on those business cases, we are going to define our data governance targets. And again, they need to be reasonable. I'll give you an example. Sometimes a company will come to you and say, we need to govern our critical data elements. They don't even know what a critical data element is. If you're a programmer, anybody here who has a programming background, if I were to go up to you and say, hey, what data element can I remove from your program and have it work? You will all look at me as if I'm from Mars and tell me, well, David, none of them. If I didn't need them in my program, I wouldn't have them. So is every data element and business term critical? No. That'd be hundreds of thousands in a big organization, maybe millions. That's not realistic. And what you'd find out is maybe they want to focus on customer. We want a 360-degree view of customer. Oh, the business goal is to get a 360-degree view of customer. So we need to define the critical data elements that would enable us to get a 360-degree view of customer. I will give you a little bit of insight into this one. It's about 200 to 300 business terms. That should be plenty even for a complex organization. All right. We have defined. Anne-Marie, I know we have a bunch of questions coming, right?
Yes, we do.
I will make sure to give ample time, even though I never really do that. But then once you have the recommendations, once you know the tasks you need to do, maybe it's build a domain model. Maybe it's recruit lead data stewards for each one of your domain areas. Possibly we need to build our data governance workflows. Maybe we need to conform to CCPA 2.0. That's the latest coming out of California. Maybe the Virginia Privacy Act is critical. Maybe the Colorado Privacy Act. If you're listening saying, David, I didn't know Virginia or Colorado enacted a data privacy law. Yes, they both have all this year. Yes, data privacy is changing constantly and the requirements are only going up. If this is what we need to do, then we need to build a roadmap of how we're going to get there. Here are the major tasks we need to do, and here's how we need to do it. When we do an assessment, not an automated one, but one where we do it live, typically we'll have 3 categories of recommendations. 1, foundational. This is the stuff you have to do. If you're at all serious about data governance, you have to do these 4, 5, 6 tasks. If you are aspirational, if you would like to, or I should say extend, if you want to extend the program, take on a little bit more, here are the things that are not foundational, but we are going to need to do sometime if we're going to reach our goals. And then aspirational. This is when somebody says we want to move and mature as quickly as we can. These would be those recommendations. So I've said a lot. What does a roadmap possibly look like? So please do not take this slide and say, David just gave us the roadmap we need for our data governance program. No, I'm showing you common things that we recommend for a data governance roadmap. Number 1, if your organization is newer to the value of data, it's not as data literate as some others, we're going to probably have to educate our key executives. We're going to probably have to help raise their data literacy so that they really realize how vital data is. And when we have bad data, how it handcuffs our company. I have to tell you, I've seen this many times where you can build the best analytics in the world. You can have fantastic algorithms. You can have terrific machine learning algorithms and results. But if the executives won't follow them, the decision makers won't use them, what's the point? So a lot of times you do need to educate these people. And then attain executive sponsors. A lot of times when you start these efforts, you may not have that sponsor or you only have one. You need multiple sponsors. Define an enterprise data strategy. Anne-Marie, we did a webinar, I think just last month on this topic, and to no shock, so very few companies have a true enterprise data strategy. It drives me nuts. It only takes 200-300 hours to build one of these things. And the value of a data strategy, I will tell you right now, it's not in the beautiful words that go out into paper and the guiding principles. What it is getting your executive management to look at that strategy, to help define it, and then to say, yes, this is the commitment we are making. So to me, it is really a document that is so critical to align our executives. Having formal data governance training to our key staff members, we need to have that. Don't set up anybody for failure. They need to be properly trained. Building a domain model, hiring a truly experienced data governance program manager, forming your data governance council, developing your metadata management capability, which I said was so critical. And then maybe we just want to stand up in data governance, 1 or 2 domain steward groups to begin with. Maybe customer and product, maybe material and product, maybe something else that would be relevant. These are the things that are typical in a roadmap for data governance.
And one thing I would mention in a roadmap,
I'm sorry?
I'm going to say one thing that I would mention in a roadmap is ensuring that you have the continuing efforts, that you're not just looking at the roadmap as a snapshot.
Yeah.
But it is really a journey, and that you've put on the roadmap the points to maintain that journey once you've started it.
Stephen Covey would call that sharpening the saw. And that you're exactly right. This is not, I've not used the word project, at least I've tried not to. It's a program. And that journey is evolutionary. Yes, in that little slide I showed previously, yeah, we're going to build out 2 domain groups full of data stewards. We probably have 9 or 10 domains. We have 8 more to fill. And guess what? Business doesn't stay static. It changes. Government agencies don't stay static. We have an agency now that we're working with. Their whole charter and mission radically changed just 4 short years ago. That's unheard of in the US government. So those kind of things are so critical. So I'd agree, it's evolutionary. Anne-Marie, hit me with the questions. I saw a bunch popping up.
Okay, we had 26 questions. Many of them I've been able to answer in typing to save time. But we have one question. How do you address gaps in the organization when those gaps are focused on culture and not being supported by IT, and everything's been done siloed and incrementally? That's question 1.
Okay. So I would strongly, Anne-Marie, I'm really putting Anne-Marie to work today. I love this. We did a webinar on organizational change management.
Yes, we did.
So please put that in the chat. I strongly urge you to view that webinar. I go through, I think, 16 different communication vehicles, 14 different socialization vehicles. I would utilize those, things like lunch and learns, things like executive training, things like one of the things we do. A lot of you know we have classes at datamanagementeducation.com. That's a world-class learning management system. One of the things we're doing for our clients now is we're building training programs on our LMS that the outside world doesn't get to see, but that they can use 24/7 by 365. And if you're a global entity, that is a great way to go, because it's not realistic to do lunch and learns when you have staff in Asia, in Europe, in America, South and North, and maybe somebody in New Zealand. It's not realistic, and it's not cost effective. I mean, you could do it, but it's really expensive. So to me, that is really part of the journey that we need to address. Just Anne-Marie, to your point of that, to the person's question of changing our culture, it's a lot of education. It's a lot of communication. In the webinar that Anne-Marie shared, I walked through a newsletter on data governance and some of the best practices of how you make it fun. I show you a stakeholder analysis. That's one of the things we do. We need to analyze our stakeholders, find out the messages that will resonate, and then hit those messages. Go to the webinar for more, but I want to fit in some more questions.
And with the stakeholder analysis, you want to make sure that you identify the challenges that you perceive or that have been demonstrated with your interactions with each stakeholder.
Anne Marie, a classic one, people are meetinged out. They are in way too many meetings. So if you can give them something fun and engaging and interesting and easy that they don't have to attend a meeting, a lot of people take that, or something they can respond to via email. That's one of the things I do when I build out a data governance program with my data governance council. I always guide them to say, hey, we won't need many meetings. We'll meet once a week for the first 3 or 4. Once a month for the first 3 or 4 months of the program. Then I want to move to quarterly meetings. We will be able to do this if, hear the threat, guidance, if you make sure to respond to emails with questions, within 48 hours so that we don't have to always meet on everything. Most people are thrilled to answer a quick email as opposed to sitting in on a meeting. Next question, Anne Marie, hit me. I'm just warming up.
This is basically the last question because we're almost at the end of our time.
Yep.
What do you do when there was a big name consulting company who got the company on the wrong track and established data stewards for siloed lines of business, and the entire data governance effort became very tactical?
Anne Marie, I could write a book on this question because this has been a major portion of my life. A lot of times the bigger companies, they don't really have data governance professionals in them. They're trying to sell some tactical thing. I've had this experience many times. That's when you start quoting other people. You can reference things like CMMI and their recommendation. You can reference our webinars, articles on Data Management U, the DIMBOK, IIM, and the things they're publishing. A lot of the people who are our partners, like IIM, like the Insurance Data Management Association, these are great groups. What I would do is I would make that company argue against those industry recognized experts and or organizations, because they're not going to be thrilled when they see that data governance is something that comes out of a Tableau tool. Tableau is a wonderful visualization tool. It's not really a data governance tool. So great question, my good. And it's a hard one. Be very careful politically, because sometimes those companies have sold at a very high level, and it can become quite a bit of a mess for you. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Anne Marie.
No, I'm sorry. They had more material here in their question.
Oh, please.
Would it be good to establish subject area domain stewards to work closely with the enterprise data architect to come up with a taxonomy, ontology, business metadata? And is that essential to data governance success?
Yes, and yes. We definitely want to have. So whoever wrote this question, I didn't look at the question. I was waiting for Anne Marie to ask it for me. Is somebody who has experience. I could tell just by how the question is written. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. First off, they understand that you could call a domain model a subject area model as well. That mean the same thing. Absolutely. And they are saying, hey, don't you think we should have lead stewards by domain or subject area? Yes. And to have them work with your enterprise architects, what a key resource. So you definitely want to plug those in together. I wholeheartedly agree with all the points of that question. All of that would be a best practice in my book.
Creating a data strategy. It wasn't one of your points on a roadmap. Does the data strategy come before the assessment or after?
If you notice, building a data strategy was one of my points.
I'm just reading the question.
Okay. I forget. I know you know this, Anne Marie. No, it's absolutely critical. Most organizations miss it. In a perfect world, I would build an organization, a data strategy before doing the data governance assessment. In the real world, the one that I live in and the one you live in, many times we're doing them simultaneously. That's a typical thing. I can share with you a secret, and for the people we're working with, please forget I say this. I know half of what's going to be in that data strategy before we even build it, because there are some just fundamentals that any organization should adhere to. But again, what's the main value of the data strategy? Getting the executives on board. It's part of that culture shift, that organizational change management, which is so difficult to do. So for the question, in a perfect world, I would do the data strategy first. Typically, we have data governance programs. Data governance is far beyond what you see people doing in for data strategy. A lot of times we're trying to catch up to it. Anne-Marie, take it away. I know we're at the end of the time.
Yes, we are. And I want to make sure that everybody knows about our webinar next month. We do a webinar the last Thursday of every month at 12 p.m. Central US time. Next month, we'll have Marius Moscovici, who is the CEO and founder of Metric Insights.
And has maybe the coolest name of anyone we've had, Moscovici.
Yes, and with the last name of Smith, I'm probably massacring that poor man's name. BI governance for analytics. We're not going to be talking about data governance. We're going to be talking about how you can use principles to govern business intelligence to support effective analytics. Mm-hmm. Please join us. Register now at datamanagementu.com/data management webinars. And we look forward to seeing you there. Remember that we are always here the last Thursday of the month. And if you really want to discover and learn more about any area of enterprise data management, subscribe to datamanagementu.com. It's free. Absolutely free. We'd love to have everyone here become a subscriber. There are two more questions. Actually, they're very similar. I'm going to ask this of David now. How do we know whether a data governance consultant is leading my organization in the right direction? What should we look out for?
Oh, goodness. Do they even know what a domain model is? Do they know what a data? So if they are worth their weight in salt, salt's inexpensive, they should be able to pop a data governance workflow off the top of their head. They should understand what an organizational framework looks. I have a dry marker board behind me. I don't need to look at my presentation to draw an organizational framework for data governance. I should be able to do that right off the top of my head. I should be able to spit out the most common domains for a domain model right off the top of my head. I should be able to understand the common things that a data governance council will have to do day one. I'll give you a little trick. The first thing a data governance council needs to define or to decide is how their voting rights will be. I always recommend simple majority. Those are just some of the things that I would strongly encourage you to ask them. Ask them the basics. You'll trip up 90% of the posers.
Absolutely. And ask them about the question, about the points we raised today. If they don't know this as well as we do, you might want to consider another data governance consultant. At this point, I'm respectful of everyone's time. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you, David, for another informative and engaging and entertaining event. And we hope to see you next month.
Arrivederci.
Ciao.